Okay, so some of y'all were asking like, no, it's kinetic theory of gas and like half an hour lecture. What are you going to teach in that? So basically, this is not going to be a one lecture thing. It's going to be an entire series, and it's mostly for me to learn. And I thought like while in the learning process, I'll just teach some of what I know. And y'all might agree, disagree. That's up to y'all. It'll be good to have a conversation based on that. I'm going to just teach this topic based on the way I understand it and not the approach that the textbooks usually take. So having said that, let's go with the first question that I have for you guys. We'll have a bit of a discussion. I'm going to like use a Jamboard like to draw some equations, drawings, whatever. It's not really like a very, there's no structure to it, although there is. It is being recorded. It is being recorded. The meter is being recorded. All right. So, all right. So starting with, so like I'm keeping the level of this first session very low. Like it's not going to be like completely jumping into all the equations and stuff. I just want to like talk about the reason for why we need that the entire theory, like using points. I mean, why do we even need a kinetic theory of gas to begin with? So starting with like, I want to understand where y'all are regarding this topic and what y'all understand with kinetic theory of gas, and why do we even need a theory like that? Like, what is your guesses? Unmuting and talking will be the best, like, will be the fastest way of answering this question. If you all wish to type, you can type, but it's going to take some time. You might move to the next topic by the end of it, like, no? So let's go with anyone. And there's no right or wrong answers over here. It's just your guess. So your guess can be right, your guess can be wrong. And we are not like calling out, oh, you don't know anything, you know a lot and stuff. We just want to like, put in a framework. We're thinking like scientists, we need to come up with a theory. What? No. We are just talking about kinetic theory of gas. Like, why do we have a theory to describe gas? Using equations and so on. PV equal to nRT, all that stuff, like, no? What grade are you in? Cave of Science? I'm assuming 11 or 12. So 11. So you'll have 11th. Usually this topic comes in thermodynamics in the grade 11. But it's not introduced to you as thermodynamics. It's a small topic within thermodynamics. I'm covering all of thermodynamics, and I'm going to start with just like I think it's microscopic description of macroscopic properties. Yeah, I think so. That's the best guess that we have, and in fact, it is exactly that. Like we are trying to describe whatever we see in the real world, using descriptions of how small or tiny particles actually work. Alright, you have to understand that when Newton's law had come, it did not describe gases. It described colliding objects, moving objects, things you could see and do. Newton made most of his formulated most of his work based on something that he had created, Newton's cradle. Many of his experiments were demonstrated using Newton's cradle, but it did not account for how gases work. And classical mechanics basically says everything can be understood using laws of motion, considering object like particles or properties of waves. So if an object is a wave, it has a certain rules that it follows, and if it is moving like particles, then it has certain rules that it follows. In fact, waves can further be described as properties. It has further properties that can be derived from particles. You can consider waves as particles oscillating, and it gives you a lot of information. But gases don't follow any of those rules. Okay, like force is equal to mass into acceleration is something that gases cannot. You cannot talk about gases in terms of kinematical theory, kinematical equations, because you have to understand that when we were discovering or when we were actually studying gases, atoms were not discovered. Can anyone tell me when was electron discovered? Which year? It's easy to lose perspective. Swapnil is saying like it's 1897. No, it was always before 1900s, just before 1900s. 1897, I think so, is the right year. Honestly, like I don't have all this information memorized. You all can always look it up and figure it out. But it's 1880s, 1897, somewhere around that time. All right. What about the proton? When was the proton discovered? Which year? You'll are free to look it up. You don't have to like, yeah, it's nice. So 1902 maybe. It was after 1900s, definitely. I think so. It was after 1902. It was after special relativity was given. I think so. Just have a look, guys. 1920. Yeah, that seems like a more reasonable date. So special theory of relativity was given forward, like was put forward in 1905. General theory was in 1915, and then proton was discovered in 1920. So till that point of time, we did not know what was the basic foundation of where the positive charges came from. So, and neutron came further later, like in 1930 or something like that. So we did not know atoms existed. We had some idea, but we did not know what the shape, size, or how they basically worked until about 1932, as Pratap has mentioned over here, that Chadwick actually discovered the neutron, and we had some kind of a foundational understanding of what atoms, molecules, and all these particles are made of. Till then, we can just say that we can keep dividing objects, and you can reach a point where you have particles. You can describe everything with particles. Alright, so I hope everyone can see the Jamboard that I'm presenting right now. And let me go with this. Alright, fine. So we have Newton's laws. Eesh. You have Newton's laws, and this can actually describe anything using particles or waves. Okay, one of the two. Alright. How do we know something is a particle? We know it's a particle because it first follows Newton's 3 laws, action, reaction, all that stuff. But it also has properties that we can talk about. It has mass, it has momentum, it has kinetic energy. Okay, and how do we know if something is a wave? Well, it has wavelength, okay, it has frequency, and it also has it also has other properties, like the energy is proportional to the square of the amplitude rather than the velocity itself. So you know something is a particle if it follows this, and you know something is a wave, it follows this. Alright. Later there were other stuff that was started to get discovered using like things like charges, magnetism, that did not follow any of these description. We can use it to help understand charges and all that stuff better, but honestly it required new theories all by itself. One of these things were the whole concept of heat. What is heat? What is temperature? Okay, why do objects go from solid to liquid to gas? Plasma was not really understood by then. So why does this happen? Okay, and what's the actual difference between heat and temperature? Is energy over here anyway related to heat over there, or is heat something like a different thing altogether? All these questions needed to be answered. Alright, and before we proceed ahead, like, can anyone tell me what's the difference between heat energy or heat energy and temperature?
Temperature is a quantity to measure heat energy. Like
temperature is a quantity to measure heat energy. I actually like that definition over there. How many of y'all agree with Vivan? Vivan actually gave the definition. Temperature is a quantity to measure heat energy. You can say yes, I agree, no, I don't agree. That's all I need from everyone. So you can put that in the chat. Okay, so temperature is more of a degree of heat. Okay, they are related. Both of these are related to each other, but they are not the same thing. All right. For example, what is the unit? If I say like I'm heating something with to a certain amount, what is a unit of heat energy? What is the physical quantity? Joules. Okay. So we have joules. Joules is basically a quantity of energy, not heat actually. But it turns out heat is heat. Heat is actually energy. So it uses joules as a unit. But what about temperature? How do you measure temperature? Calories was the original form. Yeah. So temperature, we have Kelvin, we have degree Celsius, we have degree Fahrenheit, maybe a few other options too. Okay, before heat was measured in joules, we did have calories. Alright, we did have calories, and joules came later. Okay, we thought of heat as a different thing compared to energy. In fact, we thought of heat as something that has, I forgot, calorific value. Was that something it is? Which basically means if you have an object, a block of metal, we can assign it different properties. One of the properties is obviously mass. We can measure that in kilograms. Alright. Other one is volume. We can measure that in cubic cm. And there are other stuff. One is like density, which is mass upon volume anyway. Conductivity could be a property if it is the same material. Conductivity. That all came later. But there's also another property that you can assign to this is how much calorie does it have. Calorie. How much of it? It's like the scientists at during that time thought of it like fluid. Okay, like if this box was like a container, you can fill it with this fluid called as calorie. Alright. And if you have another container, very similar, which has less calories within it, okay, the container having more calories is going to transfer some of its calorie to the other container until both of the levels become equal. Just like how water flows from high level to a low level, right? So if you have two objects, and you have a siphon, okay, the liquid kind of flows from one place to another until the level kind of becomes equal. So calorie also seemed like a fluid that flows from high level to a low level. We have a lot of participants today, 14 people, that's quite good. Okay, that's what a calorie felt like. And in fact, if you look at the calculation of specific heat capacity and all that stuff, which will come later, it kind of uses the same concept that heat flows. In fact, that whole term comes from that, like heat flows from hot objects to cold objects and things like that. Alright. So heat and temperature are not the same thing, they're different. Heat is a unit of energy. Alright. And temperature is basically a level of hotness or coldness. That's the simplest form of definition that you can give. Okay, and in order to demonstrate the difference, we'll take a swimming pool. Okay, and the swimming pool, let's say, is at room temperature, which is 27 degrees Celsius. And you have a cup of water, which you have just taken from the stove. And this is at 99 degrees Celsius. Okay, almost boiling. Okay, obviously, the amount of the level of hotness over here is this is extremely hot. This is going to be very hot. This swimming pool, you can jump into it, you can like swim around it, nothing's going to happen. Alright, so this is 99 degrees Celsius, 27 degrees Celsius. You take this water and dump it into the swimming pool. Okay, you just throw this entire water into the swimming pool. Assuming no loss of heat anywhere else, all the heat goes into the swimming pool. What would happen to the temperature of the swimming pool? Yes, Swapnil, we are just I'm just keeping a very basic definition. Obviously, that's not the right definition. We can simplify it further. We all know, if you have done a bit of kinetic theory, you know that temperature is related to the average kinetic energy. So we'll get to that, but I want to just build to it. Alright. So question, temperature, will it increase, decrease? Anyone?
Can you repeat the complete question? Actually, I was busy with some other work.
Yeah, sure. Swimming pool, 27 degrees Celsius. You throw a cup of water, which is almost boiling, 99 degrees Celsius. Question is, will the temperature of the swimming pool raise?
Yes.
Will it increase? If it increases to what amount? What will the final temperature be, if you had to guess?
That will depend upon the amount of water which you are adding and the amount which is already present there in the pool.
Yeah, so it's like a normal swimming pool. This cup has standard water, which is like around 200 grams, which gets to 200 ml. And that's the amount of water in your glass. The swimming pool probably has, I don't know, 10 raised to 6 liters. Let's go with these numbers.
That will give us like 27.02 or like something like that.
27.02. A little more than 27, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but will it be measurable by a thermometer?
No.
No. What about the heat energy? Will that increase? Total heat energy, whatever heat energy we had over here,
Yeah, that will increase.
and heat energy we have over here. Okay, this total heat energy, will that increase?
No, not total won't. Of the swimming pool it will increase, but for the whole system it won't.
Whole system at one. One thing we notice is that the heat energy remains constant. For the entire system, the heat energy remains constant. This is 27, this is 99, and mixing them basically changes the temperature. Temperature will definitely change for both the systems, and heat energy won't. Go ahead, someone wants to say something. Okay. All right, just 1 second. All right. Fine. So the temperature definitely changes, as you know that the 27 degrees will increase, but not so much. It will be so insignificant that you will not be able to measure it on any scale. This 99 degrees Celsius is completely gone. Okay, it kind of adds to the swimming pool. But the total heat energy remains constant. If you have comparable surfaces, if you have comparable buckets, one bucket having 10 liters of water, other bucket having 10 liters of water. All right. Heat energy inside this, if you are saying like it's 10,000 joules, as an example, let's say this is the total heat energy, 10,000 plus 10,000. We have 20,000 joules over here. All right. Temperature of this, 10 degrees Celsius. Temperature of this, 30 degrees Celsius. You mix this up, the temperature will change. Okay. So you have 10 and 30, this will average out to 20 degrees Celsius because of the way it is set up. Alright, but the total heat energy does not change. You have 20,000 joules of heat energy at the starting. It's going to remain 20,000 joules of heat energy later. Alright. So we have something called as internal energy. So alphabet has put internal energy will be constant, but energy will be constant. Okay, so we have this entire concept of internal energy. Let's go to that. What do you mean by internal energy? Alphabet, let's go with you. What do you think? How would you describe it? I'm assuming you're typing, so I'm going to give you some time. Anyone else also wants to answer? It's the sum of mechanical energies of every particle. Alright, so we are coming back to this entire idea of objects being made of particles. But up to now, whatever I'm showing over here, all these examples that I'm showing, does not consider that the objects need to be made of particles. You can do these experiments and you can figure this amount of energy that you're adding, subtracting, changing, all that stuff. Temperature can be measured. Heat energy to some extent you can measure by like talking about how much time you placed it on a fire. So you place this first one for 10 minutes we can assume that the heat energy increased by 10,000 joules. This one was kept slightly longer, so it might be 30,000 or 40,000 joules. But you can measure heat energy in different methods. You can measure temperature using thermometers, but none of these experiments need you to consider that the objects are made of particles, and these were the kind of experiments that were done a long time back. All right, people did not know objects were made of particles, and they had to make sense of this. All right, now the next thing that we did was we looked at objects changing phases. Solids become liquid, okay, and liquid becomes gas. That's a mushroom cloud, but let's assume it's steam. Okay, so solid to liquid to gas. This also is extremely dependent on amount of heat that you supply to the objects, or amount of heat energy that these objects have. We know this for sure because we know the amount. The longer we keep this on a fire, okay, solids are going to turn to a liquid, and if you keep it on the fire long enough, you supply more heat energy to it, it's going to turn into gas. So this is well understood that heat signifies the change of state, solid to liquid, liquid to gas. And you need to explain why this happens. So if you want to explain, we have to use the best theory which is available to you, which at the moment was Newton's laws. You have to make a first, you have to first decide now, what do you use? Do we consider heat and temperature as a consequence of objects having particles or objects having waves? And why would you choose one over the other? Okay, we also talked about heat flowing from point 1 to point 2 like fluid. So shouldn't they be considered like liquids or like some kind of waves rather than particles? How would you choose to go with waves or with particles?
Depending on what kind of mechanics you have, you can choose that way.
But you don't have mechanics. We're developing the mechanics right now. Currently we are going to assume, we're going to think like scientists, and we are going to keep on develop. You have two choices, you need to choose one. Waves
I
do
think
have a medium.
laws of motion can be used on this problem and develop it, because that's how classical mechanics evolved.
Classical mechanics evolved in 1600s. The theory for heat, energy and all came somewhere in 1800s. The whole change of the Joule's experiment, which converted calorie to joules, was somewhere in 1800s or something like that. So it came like about 200 years later, after classical mechanics was discovered. Okay, Stargazer is saying that waves doesn't have a medium. Waves definitely have a medium. Okay, only electromagnetic radiation don't, and that also came in 1900 later. I'm saying, so just to repeat the question, we have this entire thing of change of state of matter. It goes from solid to liquid, liquid to gas when you apply heat. We also have this entire thing like the heat energy remains constant when you mix objects, but the temperature keeps changing. So we have these two different concepts over here. These experiments don't really talk about objects being made of particles, at least not yet. We can do this experiment at home without using the entire concept of objects being made of atoms and molecules, because when scientists were actually working on this in the initial stages, they never really knew atoms existed. So we have to talk about all of these without the whole assumptions of atoms. So my first question is, let's use a theory which we are well versed with to describe this. That's Newton's laws. And Newton's laws have two forms. One form of it is used to describe objects as particles. If you have objects as particles, we can describe them in mass, momentum, kinetic energy, all that stuff. Other one is waves, which is wavelength, frequency, all of that. Now, as a scientist, you need to apply Newton's laws to describe this, but you need to first make an assumption. Does heat energy come out from the consequence of waves within the object, or does it come out as a consequence of particles within the object? So
I think we can think particles, because somehow we can measure the mass, because I think chemistry was being developed around the same time and we had moles
Mhm.
and Avogadro's number. So, given the fact that in the past, whatever information was available, going, considering them as particles seems like a better idea, because I don't think wave mechanics was that developed back then, but particles, thinking of elements as particles, atoms, and all was being developed on a large scale, and in different disciplines, like I said, chemistry. And like I said, the laws of motions can be applied, and if you assume that the heat or the temperature is due to movement of the particles, then you can directly apply equation for velocity and acceleration, and you can, further develop from there.
Okay, so that's a good answer actually, and partially I'll agree and partially I won't, because wave mechanics was very well developed around 1600s, like Newton's time. 1700s we had wave mechanics like properly on paper. We knew what waves were and how to describe them. But yes, if you notice over here, when you're adding one object to another, we're adding the mass to the other. So if there are other experiments that gave evidence to the fact that these objects or the heat energy is related to objects being made of particles. For example, you have a block of metal which is like 20 kgs, another block which is like about 200 kgs. Both of them at room temperature. This is at 27 degrees Celsius. This is at 27 degrees Celsius. And we want to like up the heat. We want to take the temperature from 27 degrees Celsius to, let's say, 40 degrees Celsius. Alright. This also we want to take it to 40 degrees Celsius. You'll notice that since the amount of mass, the quantity of object is more, obviously to raise the temperature you will require more heat energy. Okay, keep this on a stove for about 2 minutes. It will probably go to 40 degrees Celsius in 2 minutes, from 27 to 40. If that happens for the first block, and we are assuming that both are the same material, this being 10 times more massive is going to require 10 times more time. You'll need to keep this on the stove for 20 minutes, assuming no waste again. Alright, so a lot of experiments pointed to the fact that heat energy was related to objects being made of particles. And so that's one of the assumptions. You can go and try and explain heat using waves, will go nowhere. Alright, so that's up to your choice. You can try and develop an entire theory of heat and how solids become liquid using the entire wave mechanics, but it's going to be either complicated or it will be futile. Okay, the next thing is I want to talk about over here is the internal energy. And who was that? Someone actually said internal alphabet, right? Sum of mechanical energy. So internal energy is the total mechanical energy of all the particles. Internal energy. Okay, so what we have done so far is, first we have talked about heat and temperature. We have got a good handle of it. We know that both of them are different things, and now we have to explain them, and we have to come up with, somehow we have to use Newton's mechanics to explain them. We have concluded that objects are made of tiny particles and they are interacting. So any objects that we have are made of tiny particles. These particles are not atoms, by the way. Atoms were not discovered. So we just say like, this is wood particle. If you're using a plastic, it's a plastic particle. Okay, all of these tiny things are just particles. Now, so internal energy is the total mechanical energy of all the particles within the system. Total mechanical energy. Mechanical energy, okay. And total mechanical energy actually comes from the whole particle nature of objects. Mechanical energy is kinetic energy less potential energy. Ideally, if there are more energies, then you can talk about that too. But mechanical energy is basically that, kinetic energy plus potential energy. Kinetic energy everyone knows, half mv square. So if we have 10 particles, then you will have half m1 v1 square plus half m2 v2 square, and if there are 10 particles, there will be half m10 v10 square. add all the kinetic energy up, that you'll have the total kinetic energy. And then potential energy. How do you measure potential energy? Anyone? And what is potential energy? Silence is golden, but not right now.
It's the energy that is stored inside the system.
What do you mean stored inside? Like, how do you release it?
By converting it into kinetic energy.
Can all potential energy be converted to kinetic energy?
I don't think so.
Which ones can't be?
When the object is at rest.
Object is at rest. Okay, how about this? Planet. Object is over here at a certain height. Does it have potential energy? This is for Alona. Okay, Alona answered. So let's go with her.
Can you repeat the question?
Object at a height from a planet. Does it have potential energy?
Yes.
It does have.
It does have. Object is a satellite orbiting the Earth. Does it have potential energy? It's at the same height, by the way.
Yes.
So does it need to be stationary to have potential energy?
I guess no.
Alright. Okay. So I want to spend a little bit of time on what potential energy is today, and then we'll stop for today because I don't have a lot of time, maybe like 5 minutes. Forces come in two types. One are force fields and other one are contact forces. Okay, force fields are forces that are at every point in space. You give me x, y, z coordinate, okay, there will be a force there. Force is equal to some value. Okay. This can be like gravity. So if you have an object and you drop an object from the height, this object keeps falling down. But at every point, at this point, at this point, at this point, at this point, gravity is always acting downwards. This is called a force field. It's a force which acts on an object no matter where the object is in space. Okay, the force is there everywhere. Contact force, on the other hand, is that when your object is moving in a certain direction on a collision course with another object, these two do not exert force on each other until they make contact, and during this contact, that's only when they have forces acting on each other. When we talk about potential energy, we talk about potential energy of an object in a force field. You always require this force field for a potential energy. Okay, potential energy is the potential for an object to gain kinetic energy. That's basically what potential energy is. So if you have a surface, gravity is acting downwards, you take the object and move it against the force, and that's very important. Okay, force acts downwards, you move it again. So this is force acting downwards, this is displacement acting upwards. Alright, so if you move it against the force, the potential energy will increase. And this doesn't have to be gravity, it can be anything. It can be a spring force. You have a flat surface, keep a block over here, this is a wall, you have a spring, this is relaxed, x equal to 0, equilibrium. Okay, spring does not want to compress or expand. But you take the spring and you stretch it. Now, from the equilibrium, no matter where you keep this object to the right, whether it's over here, you will have a force to the left because the spring wants to compress. Whether it's over here, the force will be to the left, spring wants to compress. Whether it's over here, force will be to the left, spring wants to compress. If you catch this object and move it to the right, which is against the direction of the force, the potential energy will increase. And why is that? Because if you release this object all this potential energy will get converted to kinetic energy. Potential energy is a kind of bookkeeping. It's to account for where all the kinetic energy is coming from when it is released within a force. So that's all that potential energy is. Okay, so I think so I'll stop at that. Any questions I'll take right now for another 5 minutes, and we'll continue with what potential energy for particles are within thermodynamics. So that's it for today. If you all want to leave, you all can leave. If you all have questions, do ask them.
Like you said, potential energy, there is a force field which is necessary, but that in spring case, that's a contact force, but it still could store potential energy.
It's a restoring force, right? It's a restoring force for the spring. When you expand the spring, it wants to restore to its original length. So that's the force acting on the object. Okay, and it's one-dimensional. When we talk about a spring, it's usually one dimension. So it's along the x-axis. So no matter where you keep it, as long as the spring is stretched, you will always have a force acting on the object. It's unlike gravity that force keeps on changing depending on the displacement. So how far you are, that much amount of energy it will have. So that much amount of force will be acting on it. Yeah. Swapnil, you still there? Okay. You have anything to add? I know you had pointed out before saying that you would like to contest the fact. So is there anything else that you came across with saying that this is something that needs to be refined? I am making a note of all of that so that we can have the right definitions later. How can you improve your math for solving physics? Just solve physics, I guess. Alright. Okay, then I'm ending the session. As soon as I end the call, I think so everyone will be thrown out. I'm stopping presenting right now. You guys have a good day. Bye.